At 7:42 p.m., I was standing under the west balcony of Marlowe Hall with a warm glass of champagne I had not touched, watching my parents smile for their 35th anniversary photos like they had invented marriage. There were 132 guests. I knew because my mother had said the number twice near the escort card table. 132, she told the florist, tapping the seating chart with one polished nail. Not one more. We planned this very carefully. The escort cards sat in cream envelopes on a mirror tray beside a silver bowl of sugared almonds. I found mine after 3 passes. Isla Boston table 14. My parents were at table 1. My brother Graham and his wife were at table 2 with the hospital board chair, 2 donors from Dad's foundation, and a city councilman. My younger sister Linnea sat at table 3 with her husband Drew and the people my mother called our real circle. Table 14 was near the kitchen doors, next to my father's college roommate with hearing aids and 3 women from my mother's garden club who looked at my name tag as if it had been delivered to the wrong house. I told myself it did not matter. I had driven 4 hours from Portland in a navy dress that still had a crease from hanging in the back of my car, and I had brought the framed photo my grandmother kept on her mantle. My parents on their wedding day outside St. Agnes, laughing while rice clung to my mother's hair. Grandma June had died 9 months earlier. Nobody had mentioned her at the party yet. At 7:55, my Aunt Celia came up behind me while I was sliding the gift envelope under the stack on the registry table. She smelled like white wine and the gardenias pinned to her shoulder. "There you are," she said, loud enough for the 2 women beside us to turn. "We were trying to figure out who put you on the list." I laughed because that was what you do when an older relative says something sharp in public and you are still deciding if it was meant to cut. Aunt Celia tilted her head and smiled with all her teeth. "Isla, you are a guest list error. Your mother was mortified when your name printed." One woman looked down at her program. The other pretended to fix her bracelet. Behind Aunt Celia, my father shook hands near the bar, his silver tie centered, his face already in donor mode. I said, "My invitation came in the mail." "Yes." "Well," Celia said, "mailing houses make mistakes. You know how these events are. Optics. Optics." That was my family's word for anything they did not want explained. I reached for my clutch on the registry table and my fingers brushed something cold that had not been there when I arrived. A narrow gray metal case sat half behind the floral arrangement, the kind with a recessed handle and a paper tag looped through it. Box 17, the tag read in block print. Next to it was a sealed bank envelope with my name typed on the front. Isla Marin Voss. No return address, only a blue stamp in the corner that said Marlowe First Trust. I stared at it for 2 seconds before my mother's voice cut through the string quartet. She was 10 feet away, holding a crystal champagne flute, her smile fixed for the people around her. "We are about to begin the toast," she said. "This is not the moment." "For what?" I asked. "For disruption." My father stepped in then, not angry, not embarrassed. Worse, calm. He lifted 2 fingers toward the security guard by the double doors, the one in the black suit with the coiled earpiece. "Walk her out before the toast." Dad said, "I do not want donors asking questions." That was the line. Not Isla, please. Not let's talk outside. Donors. The guard started toward me, apologetic already. Aunt Celia moved back as if I had spilled something. My mother looked past my shoulder, checking whether the photographer had caught any of it. I should have left. I almost did. But the bank envelope had my name on it, and the gray metal case marked box 17 was sitting 3 inches from my hand at my parents' anniversary party, like it had waited longer than anyone in that hall had. So I picked up the envelope before the guard reached the table. The guard's name tag said D. Porter. He looked young enough that his black jacket still had fold marks from the rental bag, and his face said he would rather be guarding a coat rack than a family problem. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice low because the quartet had started at last near the marble staircase. "Mr. Voss asked me to escort you to the lobby." My father stood 20 feet away, pretending not to watch us. He had one hand on my mother's waist and the other around a donor from the Children's Museum board, smiling like he had not ordered his oldest daughter removed before dessert. I slid the Marlowe First Trust envelope under the edge of the framed photo I had brought and said, "Then he can ask me himself." Porter glanced toward Dad. Dad gave him the smallest nod, the kind he used when a waiter brought the wrong wine or when I was 8, and corrected him in front of guests. That is where I need to pause and tell you how I got good at noticing nods, envelopes, dates, and names spelled wrong on lists. My name is Isla Voss. I was 32 when this happened, and I worked as a records manager for a medical supply company in Wilmington. My job was not glamorous. I tracked purchase orders, expired contracts, vendor insurance certificates, delivery logs, and the kind of paperwork everyone ignores until a shipment disappears or an auditor asks for one signature from 6 years ago. My flaw, if you asked my family, was that I kept receipts. Not metaphorical ones, actual receipts. Scanned, labeled, backed up twice. I knew who promised what, who paid late, who changed the story after the invoice cleared. I learned it at work, but I started learning it at home. In my parents' house, memories were edited depending on who was listening. If a neighbor asked, I was our independent one. If a board member asked, I was busy with her career. If Aunt Celia asked, I was sensitive and difficult with family expectations. That meant I noticed when Graham's tuition bill was called an investment and my community college scholarship was called a blessing because it saved everybody money. Grandma June noticed too. She was my dad's mother, though he treated her like a ceremonial object. Useful in photos, inconvenient in real conversations. Every Sunday at 4 o'clock, I drove to her duplex on Alder Street with lemon tea, her pill organizer, and a canvas tote full of mail. We sat at her kitchen table, the one with the burn mark from 1989, and sorted everything into 3 piles. Pay, file, question. Never let people make confusion expensive for you, she used to say, tapping a blue pen against the paper. Confusion is where greedy people park the truck. So I became the family records person. Birth certificates, Dad's old military discharge copy, Mom's charity, gala permits, Graham's passport renewal, Grandma June's insurance forms. They called me when something was missing and rolled their eyes when I had it. If you have ever been the person your family calls only when a document goes missing, hit like so I know I am not talking into an empty room. Subscribe if stories like this hit close to home, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I want to know how many people have one folder in their house that could change the mood of an entire dinner. Back at Marlowe Hall, I opened the envelope enough to see the top sheet. It was not an invitation. It was a bank letter on cream stationery dated that afternoon, with 4:12 p.m. delivery confirmation stamped across the corner. Dear Ms. Voss, pursuant to the written instructions of June Adele Voss, contents associated with Safe Deposit Box 17 are to be released in your presence only. Below that was a name I would remember for the rest of my life. Stephen Laird, Senior Client Officer, Marlowe First Trust. Under his signature, in blue ink, someone had written, "Do not leave without the receipt." Porter looked from the letter to my face, then toward the ballroom doors like he wanted someone with a headset to decide for him. "I'll be over there," he said, pointing to the coat-check alcove. "Please do not go past the registration table." That was my family's favorite compromise. Technically not thrown out, practically put in a corner. The registration table sat under a framed oil painting of Marlowe Hall from 1911, with 2 cream-colored place cards abandoned beside the guest book. One said Mr. and Mrs. Calvin Voss in copper ink. The other said Linnea Voss and guest. Linnea was my younger sister by 4 years, though if you asked my mother at parties, she would say, "Our youngest, our miracle," and then rest her hand on Linnea's shoulder as if presenting a donor plaque. At 6:07, Linnea had swept in through the side entrance wearing a champagne satin dress that had probably never seen a clearance rack in its life. Her husband, Drew, trailed behind her holding both their phones, her wrap, and a small white gift bag from Braxton Jewelers. Mom intercepted them before the photographer could miss the moment. "There she is," Mom said, bright enough for the nearest tables to hear. "Our girl made it." Dad kissed Linnea's cheek and clapped Drew on the back. "The board was asking if you two had arrived. Not friends. Not family." The board, my parents ran the Voss Family Literacy Fund, which sounded warmer than it was. Twice a year, they posed with oversized checks and children holding donated books. I knew because I had assembled the mailing lists, corrected the donor names, ordered the envelopes, and once spent 3 Saturdays reconciling a spreadsheet after Mom entered pledges in the wrong column. She called that helping out. Dad called it your knack for details. Neither called it work. From the coat-check alcove, I watched Mom guide Linnea to the Stepandrapet banner near the quartet. Voss' 35 years of commitment had been printed in navy across the backdrop. I had caught the typo in the first proof 2 weeks earlier, when it said commitment with the second M missing. Mom had texted me the file at 10:43 p.m. with, "Can you glance? Need by morning." When I sent back the corrected version, she replied with a thumbs up. "No thank you. No invitation mention, only the little yellow thumb." Linnea saw me on the edge of the lobby while the photographer adjusted her angle. Her smile flickered. Then she leaned close to Mom, Mom's gaze snapped over to me and hardened for half a second before the party face slid back into place. A waiter passed with sparkling water. I took one because my hands needed something to do. The glass was cold and wet against my palm. Linnea came over first, Isla, she said, keeping her voice soft. What are you doing? I held up the Marlowe First Trust envelope, waiting for someone named Stephen Laird. Her eyes dropped to the bank seal. Why would the bank send you something here? That is what I am trying to find out. She glanced behind her. Drew was pretending to study the seating chart, but his shoulders were turned enough to listen. Tonight is not the time, Linnea said. That is what Porter said. Her mouth tightened. Mom is under pressure. There are donors here, Dad's partners, people from the hospital foundation. You know how these events are. I knew where the extra extension cords were because I had packed them in Dad's trunk at noon. I knew table 9 needed no walnuts because Judge Keene's wife had an allergy. I knew the anniversary toast was scheduled for 8:15. After the salmon course, because Mom had forwarded me the run of show and asked if the timing felt elegant. But on the printed seating chart by the registrar, my name had been moved from table 3 to table 14. On the copy I had saved that afternoon, I was still at table 3. Linnea touched my forearm with 2 fingers, the way someone tests whether a stove is hot. Maybe you misunderstood the invitation. I looked at her. It came from Mom's email. She probably forwarded the wrong thread. Then why did she ask me to confirm the florist invoice this morning? Linnea exhaled through her nose. Because you are good at that stuff. There it was. The family, him, good at that stuff meant invisible until useful, difficult when present, ungrateful when unpaid, selfish when I noticed. Before I could answer, Dad crossed the lobby with his public smile still attached, but his eyes fixed on the envelope in my hand. Isla, he said, low and sharp. We need to talk. Now. Dad steered me away from the registration table with 2 fingers at my elbow, not hard enough for anyone to call it grabbing, firm enough to make clear I was supposed to move. He led me past the framed photo of Marlowe Hall and into the short hallway by the coat check. The noise from the ballroom turned muffled there, all forks and laughter behind thick doors. Mom was 10 feet behind us, pretending to adjust the pearl clasp at her wrist while watching my hand. What is that envelope? Dad asked. It was delivered for me. By whom? Marlowe First Trust. His jaw moved once. This is not the place. For what? For you to create confusion? I looked down at the envelope. My name was printed cleanly across the front, Isla Marine Voss, personal delivery. Under it was Marlowe Hall's address, that day's date, and a small blue sticker with 17 written in pen. I had not opened it fully because the way Linnea stared at it made me want both hands visible. Dad lowered his voice. You were not on the finalized family seating list. I am sorry you were given the wrong impression. But tonight is about your mother and me, and there are donors here who do not need to be dragged into old family friction. Donors, I said. I ordered the donor place cards, and we appreciated the help. That was the sentence. Not thank you. Not you are family. Help. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. Then why did Priya from Marlowe send me the final logistics packet this afternoon? Dad's eyes flicked to the screen before I unlocked it. At 2:14 p.m., I had been at Copydoc on Waverly, standing beside a humming laminator while a college kid in a beanie trimmed the last set of table signs. I paid $38.72 on my debit card because Mom had texted, "Can you handle it, sweetheart? Too many moving parts here." The receipt was still folded in the back of my phone case. While I was there, an email came in from Priya Khatri, the Marlowe event coordinator. Subject, final packet. Voss, 35th tonight. Attached were 3 PDFs, floor plan, run of show, and guest list final. I opened the guest list on the copy shop counter because Priya had asked me to confirm the allergy notes before kitchen lock at 3 o'clock. My name was on page 7. Isla Voss, table 3, family. Something about the word final in all caps had bothered me even then. So before I left Copydoc, I forwarded the whole email to my old Gmail account, the one my parents did not know I still used. I also saved the PDFs to my phone files and took a screenshot of page 7, because our family had a habit of making facts disappear once they became inconvenient. Now, in the coat check hallway, I turned the phone toward Dad. He did not read it. He looked at Mom. Mom stepped closer, perfume sharp and powdery. Isla, do not be dramatic. Those lists go through versions. This one says, final. The venue made an error. She said, Priya sent it to me because you asked me to confirm allergies. Dad held out his hand, palm up, like I was 12 and had taken his office keys. Give me the envelope. No. His public smile came back, thinner this time. Then put it in your purse and leave quietly. We can discuss it tomorrow. Why would I leave before dinner? Because, he said, glancing toward the ballroom doors as applause rose for something inside. You were not meant to be included tonight. I stared at him, then at the envelope. But you let me work on it for 3 weeks. Mom's mouth tightened. You offered. A staff door opened at the end of the hall, and Priya Khatri came through carrying a clipboard and a roll of beige gaffer tape. She saw us and slowed. Is everything all right? She asked. Dad turned warm at once. All fine, Priya, family matter. I slid my phone back into my clutch, but I tapped the screenshot again before the screen went dark. Page 7. Table 3. Family. Then Priya looked at the envelope in my hand and said, Oh, Mr. Laird is here for you. He is at the front desk asking whether you have signed for the bank packet. Dad's hand dropped from the air. Stephen Laird did not look like the sort of man who changed a room by entering it. He was in his late 50s, maybe early 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses, a gray raincoat folded over one arm, and a black portfolio case that had seen better corners. He stood at the front desk beside the guest book, reading the room the way my boss read a missing delivery log. He saw my father first. I could tell because his expression shut down a little. Mr. Voss, he said. Dad took 2 steps forward with a smile he used for bankers, donors, and priests. Stephen, I did not realize the bank sent someone over. The bank did not send someone over for you. Mr. Laird said, I am here for Ms. Isla Voss. Those words landed harder than they should have. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody gasped. Porter stopped pretending to check the coat tickets. Priya's pen hovered above her clipboard. Mom came up beside Dad. There must be some misunderstanding. Isla is not handling any estate matters tonight. Mr. Laird looked at the envelope in my hand. Ms. Voss, may I see the delivery cover? I handed it to him. He checked the number on the blue sticker, then opened his portfolio and matched it against a form clipped inside. Thank you. I need your signature confirming receipt of the notification. I also need to explain the chain of custody before this case leaves my possession. Dad said, Stephen, this is a private event. So was Mrs. June Voss's instruction letter. Mr. Laird said, she chose this location and date. My mother's champagne flute tilted in her hand. A drop slid down the side and landed on the carpet. June chose the anniversary party. I asked, she chose Marlowe Hall. Mr. Laird said, she named the 35th anniversary date in her written instruction. I cannot speak to her reasoning until we are in a private room with the required witness present. Dad's voice lowered. Do not do this here. Mr. Laird looked at him over the top of his glasses. Mr. Voss, you are not a party to this delivery. It was the first time that night anyone had told my father no without apologizing. Priya cleared her throat. The Willow Suite is empty until tomorrow breakfast. It has a door, a table, and the corridor camera covers the entrance. Mr. Laird turned to her. That will work. I will need your name and role on the venue log. Priya Khatri, event coordinator. Thank you. Dad stepped closer to me. Isla, listen to me. Whatever your grandmother left, we can handle it as a family. That sentence would have worked on me at 22. It might have worked at 28. It almost worked that night because I was tired, hungry, and still wearing the smile people expect from daughters at family events. But I could see the gray case behind the flowers. I could see my name on the envelope. I could see Dad watching it like it was a lit match. No, I said, we are going to the Willow Suite. If you are watching this and you would have opened that envelope in the hallway, comment box 17 below. I want to know who else has learned that a calm document can scare people more than a shouted accusation. Keep watching because the first page in that bank case did not mention money. It mentioned my grandmother's kitchen table. The walk to the Willow Suite took less than 2 minutes, but I remember almost every step. Priya led us through a side corridor behind the ballroom, past framed photographs of weddings and charity lunches. The carpet had a green and gold pattern that made my eyes hurt. If I looked down too long, Mr. Laird walked beside me with the gray case in one hand and his portfolio in the other. Porter followed because Dad had asked him to, then looked relieved when Priya told him to wait outside the door as a venue witness. Dad and Mom came too, though Mr. Laird made clear they were not required. Mrs. June Voss's instruction allows family members to be present only if Ms. Isla Voss permits it, he said. Everyone looked at me. I hated that part. I wish I could say I stood there with perfect confidence, but I did not. My hand was sweating around my clutch. My stomach felt hollow. The old training in me still wanted to make the room less awkward for the people who had made it awkward. I said, they can come in, Priya stays. Dad's eyes moved once, Fast, to Mom. The Willow Suite had 12 chairs around an oval table, a sideboard with empty water glasses, and a whiteboard with South Coast Dental Group faintly visible from the morning before. Priya turned on the overhead lights. They buzzed once before settling. Mr. Laird placed the gray case in the center of the table and set his portfolio beside it. "Before I open anything," he said, "I need to confirm identities." He took my driver's license, compared it to a photocopy in his file, and wrote the last 4 digits on a receipt form. Then he asked Dad and Mom for their names because they had chosen to be present, even though they were not parties to the delivery. Dad hated that wording. I watched him hear the difference between being centered and being listed. "Calvin Voss," he said, "Marin Voss." Mom said Priya gave her full name again and spelled it. Mr. Laird wrote slowly. He did not perform. He did not threaten. He treated the paperwork like it mattered, which already made him feel safer than most of my family. Mrs. June Adele Voss maintained Safe Deposit Box 17 at Marlow, First Trust from April 3, 2001 until her death on February 11th of this year, he said. On November 6th of last year, she updated her access instruction. She named Isla Marin Voss as the only person authorized to receive the contents after her death, after a 9-month waiting period, and only after written notice had been personally delivered. My mother said, June was confused last fall. Mr. Laird looked up. The bank required a capacity letter from her physician and a separate witness attestation for that update. Both are in the file. Dad folded his arms. This is absurd. Isla was not even around for most of the hard decisions. I turned to him. I was at her house every Sunday. Tea and mail are not hard decisions. That one hurt because it was the exact size of him. He could take a thing that had cost me time, gas money, missed weekends, and worry, then make it sound like a hobby. Mr. Laird unlocked the gray case with a key from his portfolio. Inside was a brown accordion folder, a smaller sealed envelope, a white USB drive in a plastic evidence sleeve, and a blue notebook with Grandma June's handwriting on the cover. For Isla, if they make you feel crazy. I put one hand over my mouth before I knew I had moved it. Mom looked away. Dad reached for the notebook. Mr. Laird blocked him with 2 fingers on the folder. Mr. Voss, please do not touch the contents. That is my mother's property. It is being released under her written instruction to Ms. Voss. I am her son. Yes, Mr. Laird said. That fact appears several times. The room changed then. Not in some grand cinematic way. Priya stopped writing. Mom sat down without being asked. Dad stared at Mr. Laird as if the bank officer had used a private family word in public. I opened the notebook first. Grandma June's handwriting was smaller than I remembered, but neat. She had dated the first page January 3rd, 3 years earlier. If you are reading this, Isla, I waited too long. I let your father speak for me because it was easier than fighting him while I was tired. That helped him. It did not help you. I read the line twice. The page did not accuse anybody yet. It listed dates. March 12th, new online banking access requested. March 14th, Calvin says for convenience. April 2, Marin brings foundation brochure. April 8th, check 1147 missing from book. April 11th, Isla asks why the water bill is unpaid. I remembered April 11th because Grandma's sink had been full of mugs. She had laughed it off and said she must have put the bill in the wrong pile. I had paid it online from my phone while she made toast. What is this? Mom asked. A log, I said. Dad gave a short laugh. Your grandmother wrote lists about everything. It does not make them evidence. Mr. Laird opened the accordion folder. Mrs. Voss anticipated that response. The first tab said water bill. Behind it was the unpaid notice, my debit card confirmation, and a copy of Grandma's check register. The second tab said foundation printing. Behind it was a canceled check for $4,800 made from Grandma's personal account to Harlow Print and Mail, with Mom's foundation gala invitation attached. The memo line said reading packets. I looked at Mom. She looked at the table. You told me the printer donated those. I said. Mom's voice came out stiff. The fund reimbursed June. Mr. Laird turned one page. The reimbursement check appears here. It was deposited into the Voss Family Literacy Fund operating account, not Mrs. Voss's personal account. Dad said, Stephen. Mr. Laird did not look at him. I am reading the document in front of me. There are moments when betrayal does not arrive as a shout. It arrives as a bank routing number. It arrives as a carbon copy with your grandmother's careful paperclip still attached. It arrives with the smell of old folder paper and a hotel suite's burnt coffee. I kept turning pages. Grandma had not left me a pile of vague complaints. She had built a ledger. It was plain, handwritten, and specific enough that I could follow it. Dates, check numbers, who visited, what story they told, whether the first was there, whether the first asked questions and got brushed off. The blue notebook covered 3 years. The accordion folder carried proof for the entries she thought mattered. April 28th, Calvin says, Marlowe First Trust needs updated contact. I did not call bank. He took the green folder. May 3. Marin asks me to sign literacy donation pledge. Says it is symbolic. Did not leave copy. May 18th, Isla found pill refill in trash by accident. She called pharmacy. Calvin angry that she oversteps. June 1st. Linnea asks about Alder Street duplex when time comes. I said, I am not dead. She laughed. I could hear Grandma saying that last sentence. Dry, tired, still herself. Dad pushed his chair back. This is inappropriate. Mr. Laird said, please sit down. You are not going to sit here and read my mother's private notes like a performance. I looked up. Uwanami walked out in front of 132 guests. His face hardened. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this. I said it before I knew I would. My voice did not shake, which surprised me. Maybe because the notebook had given me a place to put my feet. Mom folded her hands. Isla, your grandmother was lonely. She wrote things when she was upset. She wrote check numbers. She misunderstood. Then why did she put them in a safe deposit box? Mom had no answer for that, so Dad supplied one. Because you encouraged her paranoia. The word landed like a slap, and I saw Priya's eyes lift from the log. Mr. Laird closed the notebook halfway and placed his palm on top of it. Mr. Voss, he said, I need you to understand something. Mrs. Voss did not name Ms. Isla Voss as a beneficiary in this instruction. She named her as recipient of records. This is not a windfall. It is a disclosure. Disclosure of what? Mr. Laird opened the smaller sealed envelope. That depends on what Ms. Voss chooses to do after reading the letter. He handed it to me. The envelope was cream, with my name written in Grandma's blue pen. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out 3 pages. Dear Isla, I am sorry I let them teach you that being useful was the rent you paid to stay in the family. I had to stop there. No one spoke. In the ballroom, somebody laughed through the wall, and the sound came thin and far away. I read the rest quietly at first. Then Mr. Laird asked whether I wanted the room to hear it, because Grandma had left a second instruction. She said if Calvin or Marin tried to remove you from the event before the toast, you may read the letter aloud in the presence of a non-family witness. He said, if you prefer not to, you do not have to. That was Grandma. Even from a safe deposit box, she gave me an exit. I looked at Dad. He had gone pale in a way I had never seen on him. I looked at Mom. Her face was still controlled, but her thumb kept rubbing the side of her wedding ring. Then I looked at Priya, who had no reason to know any of us and still looked more concerned for me than my own mother did. I'll read it, I said. The first page was apology. Not soft, not dramatic. Grandma named the things she had seen. She wrote that I had driven her to appointments when Dad said he was in meetings. She wrote that I had paid 3 small bills when her account access stopped working. She wrote that I had asked why her medication copay doubled and been told to mind my tone. The second page was instruction. There is a folder for each item I could prove. The bank has copies of my capacity letter, the access update, the safe deposit instruction, and the ledger. If Calvin says I was confused, ask him why he asked Dr. Mara for my competence letter on October 30th and used it for the foundation grant packet. I stopped reading. Dr. Mara wrote a capacity letter. I asked. Mr. Laird opened another tab. Yes. Dated October 30th. It states Mrs. Voss was able to understand her financial affairs and sign instructions at that appointment. Dad's chair scraped. I requested that letter for insurance paperwork. No, Mr. Laird said. The request copy says foundation grant packet. Mom whispered. Calvin, the third page, explained box 17. Grandma wrote that she had hidden the folder because she was embarrassed. Embarrassed that her son had made her feel foolish. Embarrassed that she had signed things without reading them because he sighed when she moved slowly. Embarrassed that she let my mother use her name for charity luncheons while leaving me to fix the mess afterward. Then she wrote the line I still keep folded in my desk. I cannot make them love you correctly. I can make sure they do not use my silence against you after I am gone. I lowered the letter. Dad said, she was angry when she wrote that. I said, she was organized. The next folder tab said Alder Street. That was the duplex. Grandma's house, the place with the burn mark on the kitchen table, the lemon tea, the mail piles, The upstairs bedroom nobody used because the stairs were too steep. After she died, Dad told us the duplex had been sold to cover medical debt and final expenses. He said there was nothing left once the nursing support, funeral costs, and taxes were paid. I did not question it because I had been too ashamed of how relieved I felt when the Sunday calls stopped. Mr. Laird slid a document toward me. This is a settlement statement from the Alder Street sale. He said, sale price, $412,000. Net proceeds after mortgage payoff and closing costs, $286,417.22. I stared at the number. Mom said that money went into estate obligations. Mr. Laird turned the page. The estate account received $286,417.22 on March 18th. On March 21st, 2 transfers left the estate account. One for $160,000 to the Voss Family Literacy Fund, one for $72,000 to Linnea Voss Carter. Marked Program Consulting Advance. Linnea. No, I had not expected that. I do not know why. She had been part of the hierarchy all my life, but I still thought of her as someone who benefited from the system more than someone who signed its forms. Linnea got $72,000. I asked. Dad's face closed. It was a temporary advance. For what program? Mom said she was helping with donor outreach. She teaches Pilates in Bend. Do not be cruel, Mom said. That was the moment I almost laughed. Nothing was funny. My mother could hear me name a $72,000 transfer from my dead grandmother's estate and decide the real danger was my tone toward Linnea, Mr. Laird continued. There is also a signed note from Mrs. June Voss dated November 6th. She writes that she did not authorize any post-death transfer from the Alder Street sale to the foundation, Linnea Voss Carter, or Calvin Voss personally. Dad said, because she was dead when it happened. Estate administration allows discretion. By the executor, Mr. Laird said, I was executor. The probate filing lists you as proposed executor, Mr. Laird said. The court appointment was delayed because a required heir notice was returned. I knew before he said it. Whose notice? I asked. Mr. Laird looked at me. Yours. My mouth went dry. Dad rubbed both hands over his face. It was the first unpolished thing he had done all night. We did not have your current address, Mom said. I sent you Christmas cards. People move. I had the same apartment for 6 years. Priya shifted in her chair. I had forgotten she was there until the chair leg moved. She had stopped taking notes and was watching my mother with the face of a woman who had spent a career hearing people blame printers, caterers, and assistants for things they had done on purpose. Mr. Laird opened another sleeve. There is a return notice envelope here. It was addressed to Isla Voss at 1143 North Laurel, apartment to be. The correct address in Mrs. Voss's contact book was 1143 North Laurel, apartment 1 to be. A typo. Dad said. The same incorrect apartment number appears on the first filing and the second filing. Mr. Laird said, Mrs. Voss's handwritten contact card has the correct number. Apartment 1 to be. My grandmother had written it with a little star because she said the 1 and 2 looked like a heart if she tilted the card. I had missed probate notice because someone dropped a digit. I had missed the chance to ask questions because the notice went to a door that was not mine. I had sat at table 14 with garden club strangers because my family knew I was harder to manage once I had documents in my hand. Dad leaned toward me. This is complicated. Estate work is complicated. You are hearing fragments. Then explain the whole thing. Not with an event coordinator sitting here, Priya said. I can step out if Ms. Voss wants me to. Stay, I said. The word came faster that time. Mr. Laird turned to the USB drive. Mrs. Voss also left digital files. I cannot open them on a hotel device. The inventory label says scanned statements, voicemail exports, and correspondence with attorney Ruth Sloan. Mom's head snapped up. Ruth, you know her? I asked. Dad said, she handled an old trust matter. Mr. Laird corrected him. She represented Mrs. Voss for the November instruction update. The room had become very practical. That is what I remember most. My family had spent years making every hard thing emotional. Tone, gratitude, loyalty, peace. The document stripped all that down to verbs. Requested, signed, transferred, returned, deposited, deleted. I thought about Grandma at her kitchen table, writing with that blue pen while the old clock ticked by the stove. I thought about her hiding shame inside file tabs because she did not want to die, leaving me with only a hunch. What am I supposed to do with this? I asked Mr. Laird. That is your decision, he said. The bank can provide certified copies of the contents inventory. Attorney Sloan's contact information is included. You may also choose to do nothing. Dad seized on that. Exactly, you can do nothing tonight. I looked at the open folder. The word family on the guest list screenshot seemed to glow in my memory. No, I said, doing nothing is what got us here. The toast started while we were still in the Willow Suite. We heard the first clink through the wall, then the microphone feedback from the ballroom. A man's voice, probably Graham's, said, "Can everyone hear me?" Mom closed her eyes. Dad stood. "I need to be out there." Mr. Laird placed one hand on the folder. "The contents receipt is not complete." "Then complete it. Ms. Voss needs time to review the inventory." Dad looked at me, and for 1 second, he stopped pretending. His voice dropped into the register I remembered from childhood, the one he used when no guests were in the house. "You will not ruin this night," I said. "You already asked security to walk me out, because you were making a scene. I was holding mail. You were always looking for a reason to be injured." There it was, the old family file stamped across my forehead, sensitive, dramatic, difficult, injured. I almost answered from that place. I almost gave him a speech about Sunday visits, unpaid bills, and how many times I had swallowed my own questions so his dinner could stay smooth. Instead, I picked up the returned probate notice and held it between us. "Who typed apartment to be?" Dad did not answer. Mom said Isla. "Who typed it?" "The attorney's assistant." "Probably? Which attorney?" Dad's eyes moved to the door. "Ruth Sloan," I asked. Mr. Laird said, "Attorney Sloan's office did not handle the probate filing. The filing listed Maren Voss as preparer." My mother sat very still. I turned to her. She looked at the paper, then at me, and for the first time that night, she looked less angry than afraid. "I copied it from an old list," she said. "The correct address was in Grandma's contact book. I did not have that book. It was in her kitchen drawer. I did not know that. You asked me for the key to that drawer 2 days after she died." She remembered. I saw it. Her eyes moved to the sideboard, then back to the table. Graham's voice through the wall said, to Mom and Dad, 35 years of partnership, service, and family. Family. The word filled the suite like bad perfume. Mr. Laird said, "Ms. Voss, there is one more document you should see before deciding whether to sign the receipt only or request certified escalation." Certified escalation. Certified escalation. Dad said, "A bank process when contents indicate possible estate or fiduciary irregularity." Mr. Laird said, "It notifies the bank's legal department and preserves the file." Dad laughed once. Sharp. "We are not doing that." Mr. Laird looked at me. "You are the recipient. You decide." The document was a single page, folded in thirds, with Grandma's signature at the bottom. It was dated 8 days before her death. "I, June, Adele Voss, do not consent to any use of my name, image, property, bank funds, estate funds, or home sale proceeds for the Voss Family Literacy Fund, anniversary campaign, donor materials, gala materials, or family anniversary presentation without written approval from Isla Maren, Voss, or attorney Ruth Sloan." My eyes caught on one phrase. Family anniversary presentation. "What presentation?" I asked. Mom covered her mouth. Dad said, "It is a slideshow." Mr. Laird opened the inventory list. Mrs. Voss attached a note about a video tribute planned for the 35th anniversary event. She believed her image and a story about a donation from her estate would be used to solicit pledges. Priya's face changed. "There is a donor pledge card at every place setting." I stood up. The room moved with me. Dad said my name. Mom said it too. Mr. Laird did not stop me. He gathered the notebook and documents into the gray case, locked it, and picked it up. "If you leave the room with the case," he said, "I come with you." "Good," I said. We walked back toward the ballroom during Graham's toast. I did not storm. I did not run. I walked with my clutch under one arm, Grandma's letter in my hand, and Mr. Laird beside me, carrying box 17. Priya followed with her clipboard. Porter straightened when he saw us and stepped out of the way. At the ballroom doors, Dad caught my wrist. "Not hard enough, Isla think." I looked down at his hand until he let go. I am inside. 132 guests sat under chandeliers while my brother lifted a glass of champagne. Behind him, a screen showed the first slide of the tribute. My parents' wedding photo filled the wall, the same photo I had brought in a frame, except theirs had been cleaned up, brightened, and cropped, so Grandma June's shoulder disappeared from the church steps. Graham smiled into the microphone. "Our family has always believed literacy starts at home," he said. "And tonight, in honor of our grandmother June, we are announcing a special legacy pledge to expand the Voss Family Literacy Fund." A woman at table 4 put a hand over her heart. The next slide showed Grandma June at her kitchen table holding a book. I knew the photo. I had taken it on a Sunday after I changed the batteries in her smoke detector. She had been laughing because the book was upside down. Under the photo, in Navy script, were the words, June Voss Legacy Gift, $160,000. My grandmother had been dead 9 months, and they had turned her missing money into applause. The moral line had been crossed before I entered the ballroom. I only arrived in time to see the receipt. Graham was still speaking. That gift represents the heart of our family. Stop, I said. It was not loud enough. Priya stepped to the AV table and said something to the technician. The screen froze. The music under the slideshow cut off. Graham looked down at the laptop, annoyed, then saw me. Dad moved fast for a man who cared about dignity. Technical issue, he said to the room with a smile. Give us 1 moment. I walked to the front, to the small space beside the stage where the microphone stand sat. Every table turned a little. Aunt Celia's hand hovered above her wine glass. Lenia's face went blank. Mom reached me first. Please, she whispered, do not humiliate us. I looked at the frozen slide of Grandma's face. You used her house money. Mom's lips parted. Graham lowered the microphone. Isla, what are you doing? Mr. Laird came to stand 3 feet behind me. He did not speak. He did not need to. The gray case in his hand did enough. Dad tried to take the microphone from Graham. Graham held it away, confused and irritated. Is this about your seating? Graham asked. That question told me everything. They had briefed him enough to dismiss me, not enough to protect him. No, I said. It is about the June Voss legacy gift. The room made the small, restless noise people make when a private sentence escapes into a public place. Dad said, this is a family matter. A man at table 2, the hospital board chair, lowered his glass. I opened Grandma's letter. My hand shook then. I will not pretend it did not. The paper trembled enough that I had to hold it with both hands. Grandma left written instructions at Marlowe First Trust. I said, the bank delivered them tonight. She wrote that she did not consent to her estate money, her home sale proceeds, her image, or her name being used for foundation donor materials without written approval from me or attorney Ruth Sloan. Dad said, enough. The microphone picked it up. People heard him. I said, she also wrote that if Calvin or Marin tried to remove me before the toast, I could read that instruction with a non-family witness present. Priya raised her hand slightly from beside the AV table. I am the venue witness. Mr. Laird said, Stephen Laird, Marlowe First Trust. I am present as the delivery officer for Safe Deposit Box 17. No one clapped, no one gasped. That would make the story cleaner than it was. People stared at the screen, at my parents, at the gray case, at the pledge cards on their plates. A donor in a red jacket picked up her pledge card and turned it over as if the truth might be printed on the back. Linnea stood. Isla, this is insane. I looked at her. Did you receive $72,000 from the Alder Street estate account? Her face changed before she answered. That was enough for half the room. Drew whispered Linnea. It was consulting, she said. For what program? She looked at Dad. Dad stepped toward me. You do not understand how nonprofit administration works. The board chair at table 2 said, Calvin, I would like to understand it. That voice mattered. Dad heard it and recalculated. Arthur, Dad said, this is a disgruntled family member airing incomplete information. Arthur Bell, the board chair, stood slowly. He was in his 70s with a folded program in one hand and a hearing aid that gave off a tiny squeal when he turned his head. Mr. Laird, he said, are you comfortable confirming that those documents came from June Voss's safe deposit box? Mr. Laird said, yes. I can confirm chain of custody and delivery. I cannot provide legal conclusions. Fair, Arthur said. Then he looked at my father. Calvin, why does the tribute slide say June gave a legacy gift if the bank has an instruction saying she did not consent? Dad opened his mouth. Mom answered instead. The language was drafted before we knew the final estate position. I held up the settlement statement. The transfer was made after the Alder Street sale. March 21, $160,000 to the foundation. $72,000 to Linnea. My probate notice went to apartment to be instead of 1 to be. Aunt Celia said, too loudly. This is vulgar. I turned toward her, calling me a guest list error at the registry table was vulgar. This is accounting. That line was not rehearsed. It came from the part of me that had spent years making spreadsheets while other people made speeches. Arthur Bell walked to the AV table and took one pledge card from beside the laptop. He read it, then asked Priya, Were these placed at every setting? Yes, Priya said, per Mrs. Voss's final packet. Mom said, they are optional. Arthur looked at the card again. They cite the June Voss legacy gift as a matching anchor. People began picking up the cards at their tables. Paper moved, chairs shifted. The room was no longer watching me as the problem. They were auditing the setting. My father hated that more than anger. Anger he could manage. A room full of people reading small print was a harder enemy. He reached for the microphone. Graham finally handed it to him. Maybe out of habit. Everyone, Dad said. I apologize for this interruption. There are clearly private estate questions that need to be addressed. Tonight is a celebration of my marriage to Marin and our commitment to service. I will not allow grief, resentment, or misunderstanding to derail that. That was a good sentence. Polished, almost usable. Then Mr. Laird said, Mrs. Voss's physician capacity letter and written instruction are dated before her death. The bank file does not characterize this as grief. Arthur Bell turned to Dad. Calvin, we need to pause, pledge collection. Dad's hand tightened around the microphone. Arthur, be careful. I am, Arthur said. That is why I said pause. Mom's face had gone the color of the table linens. Linnea sat down hard, and Drew moved his chair an inch away from her without seeming to notice he had done it. I stood beside the frozen image of my grandmother and understood something that should have been obvious years earlier. My family had never feared my feelings. They had feared my files. The party did not explode. People imagine exposure as a single lightning strike. But what happened was more like a power outage in a large building. One section went dark, then another, then everyone started looking for exits. Arthur Bell asked the AV technician to remove the tribute slide. The technician looked at Priya. Priya nodded. Grandma's face vanished from the screen, and the blank white rectangle behind Graham made the ballroom look like a conference room after a failed projector test. The donor in the red jacket put her pledge card inside her purse instead of the collection basket. A man from the hospital foundation asked Dad whether the Voss Family Literacy Fund had independent financial review. Dad said, of course. The man asked who performed it. Dad said he did not have the name in front of him. I watched Arthur Bell write that down on the back of his program. Mom crossed to me while the room murmured. You have made your point, she said. No, I said. Grandma made hers. You think this is loyalty? I think putting her picture next to money she said you could not use was not loyalty. Her eyes filled, but I did not trust the tears. I had seen my mother cry at the right height, with the right tissue, in the right lighting. She could cry and still keep both hands on the story. We were trying to honor her. She said, you cropped her out of your wedding photo. She blinked. I pointed at the framed picture I had brought, still sitting near the registry table. The original has Grandma on the church steps. The slideshow version removed her shoulder. Mom looked toward the table and saw it there. The old frame was cheap, brown wood with one cloudy corner. Beside it, the gift envelopes looked suddenly tacky. That was the designer, Mom said. You approved the proof. She lowered her voice. Why do you have to catch every little thing? That sentence was the closest she came to telling the truth. Because every little thing was where they hid the big things. Mr. Laird asked whether I wanted him to call Attorney Sloan. It was 8:42 p.m. I assumed no lawyer would answer. He dialed anyway. Ruth Sloan picked up on the second ring. He put her on speaker in the Willow Suite because I refused to continue in the ballroom and because Arthur Bell asked to be present as Foundation Board Chair. Dad objected to Arthur being there. Arthur said the fund had solicited pledges in front of him using a disputed estate gift, and he would either attend the call or resign that night in writing. Dad stopped objecting. Ruth Sloan sounded older than I expected and less dramatic than I wanted. She asked me to confirm my full name and date of birth. Then she asked whether I had the sealed letter, the blue notebook, and the estate transfer summary in front of me. Yes, I said. Good. Do not give those originals to anyone. Dad said, Ruth, this is Calvin. I know your voice. She said. He paused. Then you know this is an unfortunate family misunderstanding. I know June asked me to document concerns about estate pressure, bank access, and foundation use of her assets, Ruth said. I also know she instructed me to wait until the 9-month mark unless the anniversary solicitation happened sooner. Mom whispered. She planned this. Ruth heard her. June planned for the possibility that you would use her name at a donor event. I sat with Grandma's letter in my lap and felt both protected and sick. Protected because she had seen it, sick because she had seen it coming, and had still spent her last months managing the people who should have cared for her. Ruth explained the next steps. She did not promise anyone would go to jail. She did not say the law was simple. She said she could file a request for estate accounting, notify the probate court of potential notice irregularity, and send a preservation letter to the foundation board. She said the bank could certify copies. She said the USB drive should be imaged, not opened casually. That last part sounded like my job. Preserve the file. Do not contaminate the record. Arthur Bell asked what the foundation should do that night. Suspend pledge collection tied to the June Voss legacy gift. Ruth said, preserve donor materials. Do not destroy drafts, emails, slides, pledge cards, bank records, or board minutes. Dad said, this is excessive. Ruth said, then you will have an easy time proving it. I could have hugged her through the phone. Linnea came into the suite while Ruth was still on speaker. Drew was behind her, looking like a man who had discovered his wife's family came with footnotes. I did not steal from Grandma, Linnea said. Nobody had said she did. That was the trouble with documents. They made people answer accusations before anyone spoke them aloud. Ruth asked, who is speaking, Linnea Carter? Did you receive a $72,000 payment from the estate account? Linnea looked at Dad. I received a consulting advance from the foundation. Arthur Bell said, the foundation books will clarify that. It was for outreach. Linnea said, I did donor calls. To whom Arthur asked. I do not have the list memorized. I said, did you know it came from the Alder Street proceeds? She looked at me then, not at Dad. Her face was defensive, but underneath it was something younger. Panic, maybe. Or shame, trying to decide whether it could survive the night. Dad said Grandma wanted us to have support. She said, support for what? My studio lease fell through. Drew stared at her. You told me your parents gave you that? Linnea snapped. They did. Ruth said, everyone needs to stop characterizing funds until the records are reviewed. That sentence saved us from the fight Linnea was ready to have. She wanted a sister argument. Ruth kept it in accounting. The rest of the evening broke into practical pieces. Priya collected a copy of the donor pledge card, the final packet email, the run of show, and a photo of the frozen slide from the AV technician's laptop. Arthur Bell wrote a note suspending pledge collection pending review and signed it in front of Priya. Mr. Laird completed the receipt for box 17 with me and listed each item: one blue notebook, one accordion folder, one sealed letter opened by recipient, one USB drive sealed in evidence sleeve, one estate transfer summary, one capacity letter copy, one safe deposit instruction copy. I signed my name 6 times. My parents returned to the ballroom, but the party had changed shape. The salmon came out late. Graham did not finish the toast. Aunt Celia left before dessert and told 3 people she had a migraine. The board chair stayed until every pledge basket was removed from the room. I sat in the Willow Suite with a glass of water and Grandma's letter folded beside my phone. At 9:36 p.m., Linnea came back without Drew. She stood in the doorway and said, are you happy? It was such a Linnea question. Not, are you okay? Not, what did you find? Happy, as if I had spent the night planning my own entertainment. No, I said. That seemed to irritate her more than yes would have. You embarrassed everyone. Everyone. You know what I mean? I embarrassed Dad, Mom, and you. She crossed her arms. You made it sound like I knew something. Did you? She looked down the hall. Dad said Grandma wanted to help me. He said there were funds set aside for grandchildren and you were being weird about the estate because you wanted control. I could have attacked that. The old version of me might have. I could have asked why she believed him, why she took the money, why she never called me when Grandma died except to ask whether I had the funeral program file. Instead, I asked, did you sign anything? She hesitated. Linnea, a consulting agreement with the foundation. I think so. Do you have a copy? Dad said he would keep it. There it was. The small trap inside the bigger one. Linnea was spoiled. Yes. Careless. Yes. But she had also been trained to accept money without paperwork because questions made the gift less pretty. You need your own lawyer, I said. Her face twisted. Do not talk to me like I am stupid. Then do not act like the copy does not matter. She flinched. For a second, I saw the sister I had shared a bathroom with. The one who cried in 10th grade because Mom said her arms looked soft in a sleeveless dress. The golden child had a nicer cage. It was still a cage. Then she said, you always wanted this. To be right. The softness left. No, I said. I wanted someone else to keep the original for once. She left without answering. I did not see my parents again until the next morning. I slept at the Camber Inn off Route 6 because I could not face the 4-hour drive. That is not the brave version of the story, but it is the true one. I sat on the hotel bed in my navy dress, shoes on the carpet, and called my boss to say I needed Monday off. Then I put the gray case on the desk and stared at it until 1 a.m. without opening it again. At 7:12 in the morning, Ruth Sloan called. "Do you have coffee?" she asked. "Bad hotel coffee." "That counts." She told me not to meet my parents alone. She told me to photograph the case, the receipt, and the envelope. She told me to put the USB drive in a padded envelope and bring it to her office or a certified forensic copy service. She also told me something I did not expect. "June wanted you to know you were not responsible for fixing all of this." I sat on the edge of the bed with the phone pressed to my ear. She said that more than once. "Then why give it to me?" Ruth was quiet for a moment because she trusted you to tell the truth about it. That is different from fixing it. I wrote that down on the hotel notepad because I knew I would forget. Trusted to tell, not assigned to repair. At 8:04, Dad texted, "Come to the house before you leave. Bring the materials. We need to handle this. No apology, no question." A command with punctuation. Mom texted 2 minutes later. "Please do not make your father chase you through lawyers. Your grandmother loved peace." I stared at that one for a while. Grandma loved lemon tea, crossword puzzles, and getting the mail before rain hit the porch. I was not sure she loved peace. I think she had endured it when peace meant everyone else got to stay comfortable. I did not go to the house. I drove to Ruth Sloan's office instead. It was above a dentist in a brick building with a narrow stairwell that smelled like copier toner. Ruth met me at the door in black trousers and blue reading glasses on a chain. She was not warm in the way people perform warmth. She was focused, which helped more. We spread the documents across a conference table under fluorescent lights. Ruth read Grandma's letter first. She did not interrupt it with sympathy. Then she read the estate transfer summary, the returned notice, the capacity letter, and the foundation pledge language Priya had emailed at 11:18 the night before. "Your grandmother was careful," she said. "She was scared." Both can be true. That became the theme of the next 6 weeks. Both can be true. Dad could have spent years doing visible charity work and still misused estate money. Mom could have believed family image protected everyone and still typed the wrong apartment number twice. Linnea could have accepted money without understanding the source and still benefited from not asking. Grandma could have hidden the documents because she was ashamed and still made one brave plan before she died. I could love people and refuse to carry their version of events. Ruth filed a request for estate accounting the following Tuesday. The probate court did not move at movie speed. No judge slammed a gavel. No police walked into Marlowe Hall. Instead, letters went out. Certified mail, email copies, a preservation notice to the Voss Family Literacy Fund, a request for bank records from the estate account, a demand for the consulting agreement Linnea said she had signed. The foundation board held an emergency meeting. Arthur Bell resigned as chair 2 days later, then agreed to serve as interim compliance lead because, in his words, leaving Calvin alone with the file would be a second mistake. That quote made Ruth laugh once through her nose. Dad hired an attorney named Martin Pell, who wrote the kind of letter that uses for paragraphs to say nothing should be anyone's fault. Ruth sent back 6 pages with attachments. Mom called me 12 times in 1 week. I did not answer. She left voicemails that moved through every room in the house of denial. First room, concern. "Ela, sweetheart, I know you are overwhelmed. Please call me so I know you are safe." Second room, blame. "You have no idea what your father has sacrificed for that foundation." Third room, nostalgia. "I found that little blue sweater Grandma knitted you. I thought you might want it." Fourth room, threat wrapped in etiquette. "People are asking questions, and silence is making this worse for all of us." I saved every voicemail. My boss, Diane, gave me permission to use the locked file cabinet at work for temporary storage until Ruth arranged a document box. Diane was the kind of woman who could tell from one sentence whether a problem required tea, a scanner, or a witness. She gave me all 3. "You look like you have not eaten," she said on the Friday after the anniversary. I ate crackers. Crackers are not lunch. She drove me to a diner by the highway and made me order eggs. I told her the short version between bites. She did not say family is complicated. People say that when they want the injured person to lower the bill. Diane said, "They made you the unpaid control system, then got mad when the control system worked." I wrote that down too. The accounting revealed more than the anniversary slide. The $160,000 transferred to the foundation had been recorded as a restricted legacy gift, then used as a matching anchor for donor solicitations. Some funds were still in the account. Some had paid for printing, venue deposits, and a consultant retainer to a marketing firm owned by Dad's friend. The $72,000 to Lena had been labeled Community Outreach Consulting Advance. But the agreement had no deliverables, no schedule, and no board approval signature except Dad's. There were smaller things too. A $4,800 printing check from Grandma's personal account, a $1,260 florist deposit for a literacy luncheon, a $900 reimbursement to Mom for volunteer travel during a weekend she had spent at a spa with Aunt Celia. None of these alone would make a dramatic title. Together, they showed a pattern. Ruth kept reminding me that patterns mattered. Do not argue feelings, she said. Show sequence. Sequence was something I understood. October 30th, capacity letter requested. November 6th, Grandma updates Box 17 instruction with Ruth and Marlo First Trust. February 11th, Grandma dies. February 24th, probate notice mailed to apartment to be. March 18th, Alder Street proceeds enter estate account. March 21st, transfers leave estate account. May 3rd, donor slide draft created. May 18th, anniversary packet lists, June Voss legacy gift. May 27th, I am moved from table 3 family to table 14. May 28th, my father tells security to walk me out before the toast. When the facts sat in that order, the story stopped wobbling. My family tried to make it wobble anyway. Graham called me 10 days after the party. He had avoided me since the ballroom, which meant Mom had probably told him to wait until he could sound neutral. I am trying to understand your end game, he said. He always said things like that. End game, optics, strategy, words that made family harm sound like a board retreat. Accounting, I said, and then corrected filings. And then whatever the court decides. He sighed. You know, Dad is not a criminal. I know Dad moved money. That is different, then the records should show that. He went quiet. I heard a car door chime on his end. Linnea is a mess. He said, she should get a lawyer. You keep saying that like you care. I do care. That is why I am saying it. No, you care about being clean. You always did. You keep files so nothing sticks to you. That one reached me because it was not fully false. I did like being clean. I liked proof. I liked dates because dates did not roll their eyes. I had spent years using records as armor. And sometimes armor keeps people out even when they are not swinging. So I said, maybe. But in this case, the files exist because Grandma put them in a bank box. Graham had no neat answer. 2 weeks later, Ruth received the first settlement offer. It was insulting in the quiet way wealthy adjacent people insult you. Dad would restore $40,000 to the estate account if I agreed the address error was clerical, withdrew objection to the accounting, and signed a confidentiality statement covering family matters and foundation operations. Ruth read it, looked at me, and said, no, you do not need to ask me. I am asking you. I am also reacting as a person with eyes. I said no. The second offer came with more money and softer language. No. The third came after Arthur Bell sent the board review summary to every director. That one restored the full $160,000 to restricted status pending court direction. Required Linnea to return or document the $72,000, corrected the probate notice issue, and removed my parents from Foundation Financial Authority during review. It did not make them admit motive. That bothered me more than I expected. Ruth warned me about that too. Paper can force correction, she said. It cannot force confession. I hated how true that was. The public consequences came in small announcements. The Voss Family Literacy Fund website changed first. My parents' photo disappeared from the homepage, replaced by a stack of donated books on a school library table. Then the anniversary donor page went offline. Then Arthur Bell's interim review letter went to donors. It used careful language, inconsistent estate documentation, suspended pledge campaign, independent accounting review. No one wrote. Calvin and Marin tried to turn Grandma's house into applause, but people understood enough. The social consequences arrived through silence. My mother stopped being invited to 2 committees. Dad's name disappeared from a hospital luncheon flyer. Aunt Celia posted a vague quote about betrayal and dignity, then deleted it after someone commented, "Is this about the bank thing?" Linnea returned $38,000 within a month. Her lawyer sent a letter saying she had spent the rest on lease penalties, payroll deposits, and business expenses after relying on Calvin's representation that the funds were lawful. Ruth said that might be partly true and partly strategic. Both can be true, I said. Now you are learning, she said. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired in a cleaner room. The hardest part was going back to Grandma's duplex after the buyer allowed one scheduled retrieval visit. The house no longer belonged to us, but a few boxes from the attic had been left in the detached garage by mistake. The buyer, a young nurse named Hallie, met me with a key and an apology she did not. "Oh, I am sorry for your loss," she said. "Thank you." I did not tell her which loss. The garage smelled like dust, cardboard, and old paint. I found 2 boxes labeled Christmas glass, 1 broken lamp, and a plastic bin of tablecloths. Under the tablecloths was a small tin cookie box with blue flowers on the lid. Inside were postcards I had sent Grandma from work trips. Baltimore, Boise, Sacramento. Nothing glamorous. On each one, she had written the date received in tiny pencil near the stamp. I sat on the garage step and cried there, not in a pretty way, the kind where your nose runs and you are embarrassed, even though nobody is close enough to see. I had spent weeks carrying ledgers and transfers, but the postcards undid me because they proved she had kept my small things too. At the bottom of the tin was a note. "Isla saves what others throw away. That is not a flaw." I stayed on the step until Hallie came out and asked if I needed water. "Yes," I said. It was one of the first times in years I accepted help without trying to earn it. The final court hearing was not dramatic. It happened on a Thursday morning in a small probate courtroom with beige walls and a clock that ticked too loudly. Dad sat with Martin Pell. Mom sat behind him wearing navy, her courtroom version of respectability. Linnea sat on the opposite side with her own attorney, which told me she had listened to at least one thing I said. Ruth sat beside me with a binder so organized it made me trust gravity. The judge did not call anyone evil. She asked questions about notice, estate transfers, restricted funds, and foundation authority. She reviewed the capacity letter. She reviewed Grandma's November instruction. She reviewed the incorrect apartment number. Dad spoke once. "Your Honor, I made administrative decisions under pressure after my mother's death. I regret that my daughter interpreted those decisions as exclusion." Ruth wrote something on her legal pad and slid it to me. "He regrets your interpretation, not his action." I almost smiled, which would have been bad courtroom behavior. The judge ordered corrected notice, independent estate accounting, restoration of disputed funds pending final distribution, and preservation of all foundation records connected to the June Voss legacy gift campaign. She also removed Dad as personal representative until the accounting concluded. No gavel slam, no speech, only orders. That was enough. Outside the courtroom, Mom approached me near the vending machines. She looked smaller without a ballroom behind her. "I hope you are satisfied," she said. I looked at the packet in my hand. "I am relieved." "That is not the same thing." "No." She pressed her lips together. "Your grandmother would hate seeing us like this." I thought about the safe deposit key, the blue notebook, the instruction letter, the 9-month waiting period, the exact anniversary date. "Grandma saw us like this," I said. "That is why she made the file." Mom's eyes filled again. This time I believed some of it. Not all, but some. She was grieving, probably. She had lost control. Definitely. She had lost the version of herself that looked generous in public. People mourn images too. "I do not know how to talk to you anymore," she said. "Start with the truth." She did not. She walked away. Dad did not speak to me that day. Graham sent one text 2 weeks later. I did not know about the address. I believe that was true. I also noticed he did not ask what else he did not know. Linnea called in late July. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered because I was trying to stop making every decision from injury. "I have a lawyer," she said. "Good." I returned what I could. I heard. She breathed into the phone for a few seconds. "Dad told me you were trying to control everything because Grandma left you in charge. Grandma left me records. I know that now." That was the closest thing to apology she could manage. Then I did not turn it into more than it was. "Are you okay?" I asked. She gave a small laugh. "No, me neither." For once, neither of us filled the silence with Mom's language. We did not become close after that. People expect sisters to reconcile because it feels tidy, but tidy is often another word for rushed. Linnea and I exchanged documents through lawyers for a while. Then, months later, she mailed me a copy of her consulting agreement with a sticky note that said, "You were right about keeping copies." I kept the sticky note because it was the first time she had used the word right without making it sound like an accusation. It did not fix anything. It still mattered. The foundation survived in a different form. Arthur Bell and 2 new board members moved it under independent oversight. The June Voss legacy gift language was removed. Funds connected to the Alder Street sale were restored to the estate account until the court approved distribution. Some money eventually went to literacy programs because Grandma had liked the idea of children owning books. but it went with correct minutes, correct restrictions, and no slideshow using her face without permission. I did not take over the foundation. Several people suggested it, which amazed me. The family had trained everyone to see me as the person who cleaned up the file. So even after the exposure, the first instinct was to hand me the broom. I said no. That no felt different from all the other ones. It did not come from anger. It came from finally understanding the job offer hidden inside praise. You are so good at this. You always know where things are. Nobody handles details like you. Those sentences can be compliments. In my family, they were invoices. I kept my job. I went back to Wilmington. I bought a better scanner because I wanted one. I framed Grandma's note about saving what others throw away and put it beside my desk at home, not at work. I wanted one place where her words did not have to serve a process. The framed wedding photo came back with me too. I replaced the cracked glass. In the full picture, Grandma stands on the church steps with rice in her hair, one hand lifted like she is about to tell the photographer to hurry up. My parents are young and laughing. The photo is complicated now. I kept it anyway because truth does not require me to throw away every good-looking lie. It requires me to label it correctly. My parents and I have limited contact. That phrase sounds colder than it feels. It means I do not attend events where my role is unclear. I do not proofread invitations. I do not reconcile donor lists. I do not answer calls that begin with quick favor. If they want to see me, they invite me as a daughter, not as a backup office. The first Thanksgiving after the hearing, Mom emailed me a menu and wrote, "We would love for you to come if you can, don't know task." No seating note, no attachment. I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Thank you. I am not coming this year." My hand shook when I sent it. Boundaries do not always feel empowering in the moment. Sometimes they feel like closing a door while still wanting someone on the other side to knock correctly. Nobody knocked that year. That hurt. It also clarified things. On the anniversary of Grandma's death, I drove to Alder Street and parked across from the duplex. Hallie had painted the front door green. There were herb pots on the porch and a bicycle leaned against the railing. The house looked cared for, which helped. I did not go to the door. I sat in my car with a paper cup of lemon tea from a cafe and read the first page of Grandma's letter again. "I am sorry I let them teach you that being useful was the rent you paid to stay in the family." That sentence still works on me. It opens something sore, then lets it breathe. I used to think being chosen would feel like someone moving me from table 14 to table 1. Now I think being chosen can look quieter. A grandmother putting your name on a bank instruction because she knows you will follow the paper. A lawyer answering at 8:42 p.m. because an old woman asked her to. An event coordinator staying in a room where she did not have to stay. A boss ordering you eggs because crackers are not lunch. Care is not always loud, but it does leave records. The last thing I did with Box 17 was make a copy of the inventory receipt and place it in my own blue folder. On the tab, I wrote, June, VOSS, truth, not repair. That is the folder I keep now. I do not keep it so I can reopen the fight every week. I keep it because I know what happens when the only copy of the truth sits with people who benefit from losing it. My parents still have their anniversary portrait hanging in their dining room. I have seen it once. In the background of a holiday photo Graham posted. They look polished and happy under the Marlowe chandeliers. If you did not know, you would think the night went perfectly. But I know where the pledge cards went. I know who froze the slideshow. I know what was inside the gray case. I know my grandmother's handwriting and the exact apartment number someone changed. For most of my life, my family made me feel petty for noticing details. Now I understand that details were the only reason the truth survived them. That is the end of my story. If you were in my place, would you have read Grandma's letter in the ballroom? Or would you have kept it private and handled it later through lawyers? Tell me in the comments. If this story made you feel less alone, subscribe and turn on notifications. I will also put a few notes in the description about Box 17, the return probate notice, and the moment I knew I was done paying rent with usefulness.